All right, well, welcome everyone. This class is all about standard costs and variance analysis. And so we're just going to jump right into the material. If you would, open your workbook to page 420. Open to page 420. And I would like for you to read that prompt or read page 420, answer the question on page 420 for me, okay? Go ahead and take a look at that. This will begin our lecture. Read page 420, answer the question. You just want to write down your answer in your workbook. Don't share it just yet. We'll get a chance to talk about it a little bit. Okay, all right. So talk to me. What did you guys get for your answer here? What did you get? You can unmute yourself and talk to me.
20.
I heard somebody say 20. What else?
Plus one just for damaged.
Yes, 20.
20, okay. See a couple people in the chat room saying 20. Did anybody get anything other than 20 though?
I thought of 12.
Okay, you thought of 12. All right, anybody else? Somebody says throw away the little girl. That's not nice. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this because this is really what we're talking about tonight. Now, with any little kid, if you ask them to do something with popcorn, like a little project, isn't it reasonable to assume that they're going to eat some of it? I mean, just think of your favorite food. And if you were asked to do a project with your favorite food, assuming it's, you know, not raw or something like that, you're probably going to eat some of it. And so that's what we have going on here. So Jillian's mom most likely starts her off with 20 bags of popcorn. So the answer is 20. The answer is 20, okay? If you start her off with 12 bags of popcorn, she'll never complete the project because she will eat it. She will begin eating the popcorn. So, but this is what we're really talking about tonight. And tonight's topic is on standard costs and variance analysis. But I just wanted to spend a moment talking about what are standard costs. And I don't have slides or anything like that. We're going to spend some time with this topic of what are standard costs. And it's really about under normal operating circumstances, how much does it cost a company to make 1 unit of their product? Now, just under normal operating circumstances. So not under perfect, not under ideal circumstances, but just normal operating conditions. How much does it cost a company to make 1 unit of its product? Now, I'm going to take a step back here for a moment just to make sure we have perspective, because we've been talking a lot about budgeting over the past several weeks. So when we first started talking about the master budget, we were looking at the company as a whole and designing a budget for the overall company's framework. And then we took a step back and we started looking at budgets for different departments. And we dove into that with flexible budgeting. Now we're still talking about budgeting, but our focus is on a budget to make one unit of the actual product. And so we call this the standard cost, or the standard cost of making just one unit. So everything we talk about tonight will be centered around the company making one unit of their product, okay? So that's where we are. Now, I want to look at page 421, just get some of the definitional or formulas that we're going to use tonight. I want to get some of those out of the way. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to look at page 421. And here on page 421, it says at the top, Variance Analysis. And we're going to spend the bulk of our evening together talking about variance analysis and how it relates to standards or standard costs. So top of page 421, I have some variables here we just need to know about, because I'm going to give you all these formulas. So under the material square, it says that A stands for actual, S stands for standard, Q stands for quantity, P stands for price, okay? So we just want to keep those variables in mind as I give you formulas today. And then under the labor square, it says that A stands for actual, S stands for standard, H stands for hours, and R stands for rate. And so this is what we're going to tackle today. Now, bottom of page 421, or towards the middle there, I have some material, direct material variances. And those direct material variances are grouped into three formulas: material price variance, materials quantity variance, and then total materials variance. And then you've got the formula there for each of those. Now, my goal is to teach you how to interpret all these formulas and make some sense of them. Just below that, we have direct labor variances. So at the top one was direct material variances. This bottom one here is direct labor variances. And so we have a labor price variance, a labor quantity variance, and a total labor variance. And again, just three other formulas that go along with it. So we want to be able to rewrite, I would say, in order to make these formulas easier for us to understand, a little bit more meaningful, beyond what you may have learned in the textbook or online having watched any of the YouTube videos. I have a way of making these a little bit more understandable. But if you don't like my method, you can go back to the textbook. You can go back to the YouTube videos if you like those methods. You'll wind up in the same place that I wind up. It's just that over years of teaching this, I've just kind of learned to take a different look at this. All right, so here we go. All right, direct material variances. So that first set of variances there, I want to rewrite the materials price variance. I want that to become the actual quantity, and then in parentheses, actual price minus standard price, close parentheses. So write that in that first blank square there. Write that down. All I did was, using some mathematical principles, extract, or well, yeah, I'll just say extract the actual quantity from that binomial expression, formulaic expression, okay? All right. So this is the first variance, just the materials price variance just rewritten. The next one is the materials quantity variance, and I have rewritten that as well. And again, I've just simply extracted the standard price from this binomial type expression using some mathematical principle. I don't even know what mathematical principle is called because I don't teach math. But trust me, it's the exact same formula. And if you know what the mathematical principle is, feel free to chime in or write it in the chat room or something. Okay. And this third formula here, I'm just going to write the word calculated. Total materials variance. I just want to write that, just say calculated. I'm going to teach you how to calculate the total materials variance later on without even paying attention to this formula here. Okay. So that'll come a little bit later today. All right. Now let's look at the direct labor variances. I want to rewrite these direct labor variances. So in the direct labor variances, the first one is the labor price variance. I'll rewrite that as the following. It's the actual hours, and then in parentheses, actual rate minus standard rate. Just rewriting the formula.
$4.21.
Yeah, this is workbook page 421. And then the next variance is the labor quantity variance. I'll rewrite that as the standard rate, and then in parentheses, actual hours minus standard hours. And then finally, the total labor variance, I'll just write that as calculated. That will be calculated. Okay. Once you write all those in, at the very bottom, I have a little table here. I call it a memorization table. I usually, in a classroom setting, I'm able to have the entire class within 3 minutes really memorize all 4 of these rewritten formulas. So for now, just write them here in the memorization table. I'm not going to spend a lot of time teaching you how to memorize these, but on your next exam, you can use 1 page of notes, handwritten, and you can write these on the page if you'd like. But these 4 formulas are really easy to memorize, but you don't have to. All right, so those are the formulas we're going to be using tonight. Keep those handy, but for now, let's just set those to the side, and we'll come back to them there on page 421. But we will need those tonight. Turn with me to page 422 in your workbook, page 422. Oh, I'm sorry. Also on page 421, just those 4 formulas, I just want you to know that I'm going to abbreviate them going forward. So instead of saying materials price variance, I'll say MPV. Instead of material quantity variance, I'll say MQV. The labor price variance will be LPV. and the labor quantity variance will be LQV. But again, we will come back to that later today, but I will begin using those abbreviations, and we'll go with those later. Okay, page 422. Page 422. Here we've got Pace Company, and it says here that Pace Company makes a dry cleaning solution known as PERC. Now, PERC is something that dry cleaning companies used to use. It was short for the name of the chemical that they used to clean your clothes with, and it was very toxic. And over the years, it's become illegal to use it now. So you'll see in a lot of dry cleaning operations that this is more, they don't use it anymore, and they use just a different process altogether. But this was a nasty chemical that they used to use to clean your clothes with. So anyway, but yeah, PERC, it's short for a longer scientific word. But it says Pace gathers the following raw materials data in making 1 gallon of PERC. It says the purchase price is $4 per pound. The shipping cost is $1 per pound. The materials, in order to make this, it requires 3.7 pounds of this stuff, okay, in order to make 1 gallon of PERC. But it says materials evaporation is 0.3 pounds. So really, when you start using this material, it's gonna start evaporating. So to make 1 gallon of it, you have to start out with more than you actually need to wind up in the finished product. And so we can kind of see this if we go back to page 420. On page 420 in our beginning scenario, we had this little girl who was given a project using popcorn. And in order for her to complete the project, she had to start off with more popcorn than what was required in the finished product, okay? Because she would begin eating it. In our situation here on page 422 with the Pace Company, they're not using popcorn, they're using this PERC, and it begins to evaporate, okay? So we need to start off with more than we need in the finished product. The finished product only needs 3.7 pounds of it, but 3.7 pounds of material, but because the material begins to evaporate, they have to start off with a little bit more. And I hope that makes sense. Give me some feedback. Does that make sense to you all? Talk to me.
They need 4 pounds.
Well, yeah. I mean, and we'll get there in a moment, but just to say, they've got to start off with more material than they actually need in the finished product. Okay. All right. So let's read on here. Bottom half of this on page 422, it says, Pace gathers the following labor data in making 1 gallon of PERC. So the top portion was about materials. This bottom portion is about labor. All right. The hourly pay rate for people is $10 per hour. The fringe benefits, meaning, you know, this could be healthcare, dental, vision plan, or whatever, works out to be about $1 per hour. Payroll taxes, 40 cents per hour. All right, so those are the costs of making this stuff on an hourly basis. But then it says the production time is 1.6 hours. That's interesting. It takes 1.6 hours to make a gallon of PERC, but it also says that fresh air breaks are going to be needed. So that's 0.2 hours. So you can't just have a person work nonstop making this PERC because they need to take a fresh air break, okay? And they need to clean up after themselves. So it says the cleanup time is 0.8 hours. So that's what's needed to make 1 gallon of PERC in terms of labor. It's more than just the time spent directly making the actual dry cleaning solution. Now, what's interesting about this, we can look at a real world scenario. And in a real world scenario, one thing comes to mind, if you look at police officers, okay? when was the last time, if you've seen it, has anyone ever seen a police officer going to work? Anybody? You ever
Yeah.
saw police? And when I say a police officer going to work, a police officer that you did not personally know, but did you ever see a police officer on his or her way to work?
Yeah.
Irma, I hear you saying yes. How did you
Yes,
know it was a
but
police
yes,
officer?
but I missed that because that I know that person, so
Oh, okay.
that won't be no.
Yeah, yeah. Has anybody seen a police officer they did not know on their way to work?
Yes,
All right, Patrick, talk to me. How did you know it was a police officer?
because he was riding in his. He lives a couple. I don't know him, but lives a couple streets from me, and sometimes he drives his, believe it or not, his detective car home.
A detective car.
Yeah, he's a
So
detective.
all right, so I don't
Unmarked police cars.
consider,
What I meant to say.
yeah, I don't consider detectives police officers as such. Not for purposes of this. I mean, they are police officers, but a detective has something very unique about them that other police officers don't have. So has anybody ever seen a police officer that they did not know on their way to work? All right, now the answer is that's probably right. It is very difficult to see a police officer on their way to work because I see some people in the chat room here. I used to work at Starbucks. I've never seen a cop at the gas station. Yeah, nope. Yeah, so it's very difficult to identify a police officer on the way to work because police officers normally are not allowed to wear their uniform on their way to work. Have you ever thought about that? A police officer is not allowed to wear their uniform on their way to work.
You are correct. They're not.
Okay, I appreciate that, Irma.
My daughter is a law enforcement. That's right.
And she's not allowed to wear her uniform to work.
No,
And
she's not.
so when she gets to work, part of the time that police officers are paid for, it's not just about how much time they spend patrolling. They also are getting paid for the time it takes to put on their uniform and take off their uniform. Most of the time they are anyway. There's been some lawsuits over this type of thing, but you've got to pay your employees. If you're requiring them to wear a uniform and they've got to put it on once they get to work, most of the time you've got to pay them for doing that. Okay. Now, like I said, there have been some lawsuits with Walmart and some other court cases regarding this. You'd have to take the business law class. I know Professor Fred Judd talks about it in his law classes. But anyway, it's more than just the time people spend working on a particular project. There's all these little extras is my point. Okay. All right. So let's go back to page 422 here. All right. Now, looking at page 422, we want to answer some questions on page 423. So on page 423, and we're going to take our time with these questions now. On page 423, the first question is, what is the standard direct materials price per gallon? And this is very important here, okay? I'm going to write that the standard direct material price per gallon is the purchase price plus the shipping cost. And there's a note here. It says the direct material price standard is the cost per unit of direct materials used in making 1 unit of the finished product. So in other words, it's the cost per unit of direct materials. It is not, 1 unit is not about the finished product. When we're talking about direct materials, we're asking how much does it cost for each unit of the direct material, the direct input. not about the finished product unit, okay? So that's what this is really talking about. And this is going to become important when we start doing a lot of the math, okay? Any questions on this, please, talk to me. All right, look at number 2. The question is, what is the standard direct materials quantity per gallon? Meaning how much stuff needs to go into this to make 1 gallon. So here, based on our fact pattern, it's the materials of 3.7 pounds, plus it's the materials evaporation that we need to account for of 0.3 pounds, which gives us a total of 4 pounds. And I believe I discussed this a little bit earlier today. Okay, so questions on this, please, talk to me.
So the answer to number 1 was $5. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Number 1 was $5. Okay. Now, number 3, what is the total standard materials cost per gallon? The total standard materials cost per gallon. Again, this word standard is here, okay? Meaning under normal operating circumstances, how much should this cost from a material standpoint? So we've got the direct materials price, which was $5. That was number 1. And in number 2, we had 4 pounds. So I'm going to multiply those together and get $20. The standard material cost here for making 1 gallon is $20. So it should cost us $20 in material cost. Okay. Questions on this, please. All right. So let's look at number 4. What is the standard direct labor rate per hour? So here it's more than just their hourly pay. It includes all their fringe benefits plus payroll taxes. So here the total is a combination of these 3 elements totaling to $11.40 per hour. This is the standard direct labor rate per hour. Okay. And number 5, the question is, what is the standard direct labor hours per gallon? Okay, so how long does it take to make 1 gallon? And it includes the production time, the fresh air breaks, and the cleanup time. So 2.6 hours.
Excuse me, Professor. Could you get back to the figure behind the standard direct labor rate per hour figure?
Sure. Yeah, the standard direct labor rate per hour was adding all 3 of these elements together, the hourly pay rate, the fringe benefits, and the payroll taxes.
Thank you.
Okay. And here's number 5, the standard direct labor hours per gallon. This reminds me, when people ask me, how long does it take me to prepare a tax return? I always tell them it takes me 4 hours. I might be able to do the tax return itself in 1 hour, but then I have to I need to scan the tax documents also, because I have a paperless office, or at least I try to be paperless. I have to scan in all their tax documents. And I also have to review the work that I did, all the inputs I did into the computer. Plus, I have to then print the tax return and package it. I have to go to the post office and mail it off to them most of the time. There's not a lot of people come by and pick it up. I work out of my home, and some people do come by and pick it up. But when I add the actual time it takes me to do one tax return, it's about 4 hours. And the actual time I spend on just putting the information into the computer is about 1 hour. But it just takes all this other time to do other things in making sure the tax return is done and I can give it back to the particular client. Questions on this, please? Okay. All right, so let's go to question number 6 here, page 423. It says, what is the standard labor cost per gallon? So here we're going to take our labor rate that we calculated in number 4, $11.40. We're going to multiply that times the labor hours that we calculated, 2.6 hours. And this gives us a standard labor cost of $29.64. Okay. And again, for question 3 and number 6, this is under normal operating circumstances, not under ideal circumstances. Because under ideal circumstances, Jillian, the little girl, she would not eat the popcorn. She would just work on the project and not eat it. That's under ideal circumstances. In this particular problem, our material would not begin evaporating into thin air. We wouldn't have to take fresh air breaks or have to clean up after ourselves every time we made a gallon of this highly toxic material. So that's what we mean operating under standard operating conditions. Okay. So before I move on, questions on this, please. Anything on page 422, 423? Please unmute yourself. That way I know you're talking. All right, well, silence means everything's good. So let's go and look at one more example of what is a standard. Okay, what is a standard? This is a little more tricky, but I think it'll help you out in life. Look at page 424. Page 424. This is a story about a birthday cake. Let's see here. Let's just read the story here. Page 424. It says, Andy wants to bake a cake for his mother's birthday. And remember, Mother's Day is coming up this Sunday in case you keep track of that sort of thing. So this little guy, he wants to bake a cake for his mother's birthday. And it's his first time baking. And he's using his mom's cookbook for the frosted sugar bomb cake recipe. All right, that just sounds tasty, doesn't it? Now, he's been watching a lot of kids baking championship type stuff, so he thinks he can do this. All right, so it says, the following ingredients are required to make 20 individual cakes. All right, now remember, this is called the frosted sugar bomb cake. So it takes 4,000 ounces of sugar, which costs 2 cents per ounce, takes 40 pounds of flour at 15 cents per pound, 8,000 morsels of chocolate chips at 0.002 cent per morsel, 60 pounds of butter, that's the bomb part of this sugar bomb cake. 60 pounds of butter. Remember, this is making 20 cakes, 20 individual cakes. So 60 pounds of it, 56 cents per pound, and 20,000 ounces of purified water at 0.001 cent per ounce. So you got to use some very special water to make the frosted sugar bomb cake. All right. Now, it goes on to say, and this is the fun part here, this kind of goes back to what Jillian was thinking. It says, Andy estimates that 20% of the sugar will be spilled on the floor. Now, just imagine if you've ever done any baking and you've got to open that 5-pound bag of sugar. When you open it, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to spill some of that. And because you're such a wonderful person, you're not going to use the portion that you spill. Okay? So Andy estimates that 20% of the sugar will be spilled onto the floor. Andy's very bright. Okay, so he's thinking about this. 36% of the chocolate chips will be eaten as a snack while preparing the cake. Now just remember, Andy's this little kid and he's making something with chocolate chips, those chocolate chip morsels out of the bag. So he's estimating that he's going to eat 36% of them while he's baking this cake, like any normal kid would do. All right. And it says that 50% of the water will become unpurified and evaporate when the air touches it. So it's very special water. This purified water is very special. So it's saying that 50% is going to evaporate as soon as the air touches it. So that means we're definitely going to have to start off with more water than we need in our finished product. But this entire project here, this recipe makes 20 individual cakes. And we want to know, how much does it cost to make just one of these cakes? That's the goal here. That's what a standard's all about. How much does it cost to make one unit of your product? When we were talking about on page 422, the perk, that was to make 1 gallon of perk. All right. So now we're talking about on page 424 here, how much does it cost to make one individual cake? And so we've got this chart down here at the bottom. Let me bring that up on the screen. We've got this chart here. And I want to walk you through some of this and have you do some calculations along the way. How much does it cost to make one of these cakes? So let's do this together. So chime in, okay? Take yourself off mute.
When the boy eats the chocolate chips, 36% of the chocolate chips, is that the 36% of one cake's chocolate chips, or is that 36% of 20 cakes chocolate chips?
Well, no, I mean, it doesn't matter. He's still going to eat 36%.
Okay.
If it's 36% of one cake or 20 cakes, he drinks a lot of water. You know, he's good. He's healthy. It's not going to kill him. Yeah, Mom might die, but she's going to eat the cake. So, all right. All right. So let's look at this now. Let's just look at it. In the sugar line item, the amount per cake. How much sugar do we need in one cake? Talk to me. If 4,000 ounces makes 20 cakes of sugar, or 4,000 ounces of sugar makes 20 cakes, how many ounces of sugar do we need to make one? I see some folks in the chat room here saying 200.
40.
Well, no. The amount of sugar we need per cake, we need 200.
20.
Very good. Yeah, 200. We need 200 ounces of sugar. Well, we're going to get there. We need 200 in the cake, though. Now look at this next column here. The next column is standard waste, but let me explain this 200. We got the 200 just by taking 4,000 ounces of sugar and dividing by 20. That's how we got 200. Okay? So if you said 480, I'm not sure how you got that. But, so the answer is 200. Now it says here that our standard waste, we want to fill out the standard waste column. And it says here, how much sugar are we going to waste? 20%, right? So we're going to write in 20%. We're going to waste 20%. So my question for you all, now spend some time calculating this. How much sugar do we need to start off with if we want to make sure 200 ounces gets into the cake? Do some math there. That's going to be our standard usage. Don't respond just yet. Do some math, figure it out. Now remember, whatever number you come up with, when you subtract 20% of it, you need to wind up with 200. If you subtract 20% from your standard usage number, you should get 200. If you don't get 200, you got the wrong answer.
So Morgan,
Yes.
what does it mean amount per cake? So that,
How much of each of these ingredients do you need in the cake
amount,
to make one cake?
so it's dollars amount, is a rate? What is that, 200? Is it dollar amount? Is that?
No. In the case of the sugar, it's 200 ounces of sugar.
So these are ounces, so it's a rate.
Well, it's not about dollars. It's about this amount per cake is how much of the ingredients do you need in each of the cakes?
So 200 ounces, yes,
of sugar.
sugar.
Yes.
So 200 ounces of sugar for only one cake.
Yes.
What is the percentage of sugar we used in one cake?
Okay, so 200 ounces of sugar is not the percentage. The percentage of the sugar that you're gonna, or the little kid is gonna spill onto the floor when he tries to put the sugar in the mixing bowl. 20% is gonna spill on the floor. So our standard usage column is all about how much sugar does the kid need to start off with so that when he spills 20% on the floor, he's got 200 left in the mixing bowl. And I'm looking in the chat room here, a lot of people are saying 240 ounces of sugar, and that's wrong.
It's 250. 250.
Yeah, you cannot start off with 240 ounces.
250.
You say 250?
Yep.
Well, let's go back to 240. Let's talk about why that's wrong.
160.
160? Okay, look at it this way. If your answer is 240, what is 20% of 240? So in your calculator, type 240 times 0.02 or times 0.20. Get my calculator here. $48. Okay. So 240 times 0.20 is 48. If you take 240 and subtract 48, you don't get 200. So your answer cannot be 240. And Carlos, I heard you mention the answer is 250, and that is the correct answer. It is 250. If you start off with 250 ounces of sugar and you spill 20% of that on the floor, you're going to wind up with 200. So in your calculator, type in 250 and multiply that times 0.2, and you get 50. 250 minus 50 is 200.
Okay, I get it now, because the way we got the 240, we took the 20% off of the 200, not the number we needed.
Ah, there you go. You're right there. You've got to take the 20% off of what you start with.
And that's just like the budgeting we did previous, where we were calculating into the future.
Yeah, I'd say it like that. So what is the mathematical formula to get this 250? How do we get that? Somebody chime in. I'm looking in the chat room.
0.2 by x. Hold on 1 second. 0.8 by x multiplied by x equals 200.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing here, what I'm seeing here is if you start off in your formula, you would type 200 divided by 1 minus 0.2. Okay, so in the numerator, you'd have 200. In the denominator, you'd have the quantity 1 minus 0.2. All right, so 1 minus the rate of 20%. So it'll be 200 divided by 0.8. That gets you to how much you need to start with in order to get to the actual amount that you need. Now, let's that's some mathematical games there. We probably won't need to look at that too much more. But look at the standard price here. The standard price for sugar is, as stated in the problem, 2 cents per ounce. So the standard price column, this is a dollar amount column.
Professor?
Yes.
I believe somebody needs clarification on the previous standard usage. Nick had a question in the chat.
Okay, so you get the 250 in the standard usage column. You get 250 by taking 200 and dividing by 1 minus 0.2, or 1 minus 20%. That equals 250. Okay. All right. Any other questions on how we got the 250? Question I see is, where did I get the 1 from? That's just part of the formula. It's part of the formula. Just go with it. 1 minus 0.2, or 1 minus the rate in the percentage is what we want. Yeah, just go with that formula. There is a mathematical way I come up with the 1, but I don't want to take time explaining the mathematical calculations behind all of this. It's not going to be that important. Now, the standard cost per cake is going to be take the standard usage and multiply it times the standard price. So this last column is a dollar amount. The standard cost per cake is $5. So that's 250 ounces times 0.02 cents per ounce equals $5 in terms of how much it's going to cost you in sugar. Again, if you take the standard usage of 250, multiply it times the standard price of 0.02, that's 2 cents per ounce. We got that from above in the first bullet point. That equals $5. All right. Any other questions there? All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put in the flour. I want you to just copy in what I wrote for the flour because there was no waste there. I want you to calculate the chocolate chips line item. I'm going to give you a few moments to calculate the chocolate chips line item. Go for it. So now in this chocolate chips line item, it says here that Andy's going to spill, or he's going to eat 36% of the chocolate chips. So here's what your chocolate chips line item should look like. Okay. So some of you are asking me, how do we get the 625? The 625, the standard usage is 625. The way we calculate that, we take the number 400 and we divide that by the quantity of 1 minus 0.36. 1 minus 0.36 in the denominator, that gives you 625. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and put in here the other, the remaining two line items for butter and water. You can write this in.
I'm sorry, but there is not 8,000 more cells of chocolate chips.
Well, he
Why
doesn't
400?
So the 8,000 morsels of chocolate chips is to make 20 cakes. So if you only want to make one cake, you need to divide the 8,000 morsels by 20 and you get 400. So that's how we got the 400.
Question, Professor Morgan?
Talk to me.
I'm understanding everything here with the math, but the formula for like the 1 minus whatever percentages, where did you actually get that from? Is from the previous pages?
Well, the formula that I'm giving you is simply a way of helping you to understand how to do the math. It's nothing I've already mentioned. It's just one of those algebraic, it's algebra really. But you know, if I ask you the question, how much do you need to start with? If you're going to spill 20% on the floor, you should know how, you should be able to begin to think about how much do I need to start with, knowing I'm going to spill some of it. It seemed pretty easy when we were looking at page 420, talking about Jillian and the popcorn, because you could visualize that, hey, she eats so much popcorn every hour, and the project's going to take her 8 hours to do. It was easy to visualize Jillian eating 1 bag of popcorn each hour. But if I start talking to you in terms of percentages being eaten, you need to be able to make that adjustment also.
Yeah, I totally get it. I just thought it was something that was in the previous pages, but I get what you're saying 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So listen. I don't want you guys to get caught up in how all the math behind this right now, because we got a lot of math to deal with. The only point of this page and the previous pages was to talk about what is a standard. So, and that's to get you to recognize that you're gonna have to start off with more material than you actually need to wind up in the finished product. Okay? And if you're wearing a shirt right now, and some of you probably aren't, so if you're wearing a shirt right now, if you deconstructed that shirt and actually measured how much material is in that shirt, if you wanted to make your own shirt, you know, actually sew one together, I need you to understand that you've got to actually start with more material than what's in the finished product. unless you are just that good at cutting and sewing. Some people are, I'm not. I guess another way to look at it is, I personally am not that good at gift wrapping gifts and presents. I don't do it very well. So what I do, if I've got I like to gift wrap my own boxes, and the box itself only requires so much material, gift wrapping paper, but I probably use 3 times as much gift wrapping paper as I actually need, because I'm horrible at gift wrapping presents, but I like to do it. And they know it's from me because it doesn't look nice when it's all done, because I use all this paper. Anybody else like that? Okay. Some people, I just use newspaper. All right, I like that. Okay, now one more time. Let's just look at this one more time. I want to go through the math on how I got the standard usage number for the sugar, for the chocolate chips, and for the water, okay? The standard usage numbers for sugar, chocolate chips, and water it's all the same formula. Take your amount per cake and divide by the quantity. So in the denominator, you're going to write the number 1 minus whatever the percentage is. So in the case of the sugar, your denominator is 1 minus 20%, or you could write 1 minus 0.20. Either way is fine. For the chocolate chips in the denominator, it's 1 minus 0.36, or 1 minus 36%. And for the water in the denominator, you would write 1 minus 0.50, or 1 minus 50%. That is the formula for all 3 of those. Okay. To finish this particular problem, we're just going to add up the standard cost per cake column in total, and we get $10.23. So to make 1 cake, Andy needs to spend, it's going to cost Andy $10.23, which means he's got to go to the store and buy all of this stuff.
That's before you even fired up the oven.
Yeah. Doesn't cook itself, so I guess so. There's always something left out of the equation. Okay. But again, the whole point of that exercise on page 424 and on page 422 and 423 is just to emphasize what a standard is. Okay, and my bottom line is you got to start off with more than you actually need in order to get the desired amounts in your finished product. Okay, we're going to take a break for our first break of the evening. It is 7:33. Let's come back at 7:45. Okay, I'll see you guys at 7:45. I'm going to pause the video. Please remember to tell me. All right, class, we are back. And I want to clear up something here. I was able to put something together during our break. Looking at page 424, the sugar line item, I've created the formula to how we calculate the standard usage. I want to show you how I got that standard formula. So I'm going to share my screen with you here. So I just typed out a little wording here, but the way I got there, I started off with, I wrote y equals the standard usage, all right? Y equals the standard usage. So the formula then becomes y minus 20% of y has to equal 200, okay? So that's literally the amount we start off with minus 20% of the amount we start off with equals 200 ounces of sugar. So from this formula, I solve for y. Okay, I'm going to solve for y. And so I can rewrite the formula as y, and in parentheses, 1 minus 0.20 equals 200. So this formula here that I've highlighted and this formula here that I've highlighted, I'll put them both in yellow, these are the exact same formulas. Okay, those are exactly the same formulas, just slightly rewritten. And then I can continue to solve for y. I do it down here. I say y equals 200 divided by 1 minus 0.20, which is the formula that I was expressing in the before we took our break. And so y equals 250. Okay, y equals 250. And that's how we got that. Yeah. So that's the thought process behind how we get there. But now then I have some other questions here. Let me backtrack a little bit. I want to go to a different share screen. Here we are. So then I have a question here for the sugar line item. How did we get the standard cost per cake of $5? Well, that's the standard usage times the standard price. That equals the standard cost per cake of $5. So 250 times 2 cents equals $5. The butter, the butter line item, I have a question on the butter line item. There was no waste in the standard waste, so that's 0%. You could put that in the formula, you're still gonna get the same answer. So you start off with you need 3 pounds of butter, and then the standard usage, as long as you start off with 3 pounds of butter, you're gonna be okay because there's no standard waste. But you can put that 0 into the formula of 3 divided by the quantity of 1 minus 0, you're still gonna get the standard usage being 3. Okay. All right, so I think those are the questions I have here. Any other questions? All right, so let's get into some variance analysis, and I just want to bring back to your remembrance, looking at page 421, we have that memorization table there at the bottom. That's the table that I want to start using as we go forward here. So look at page 425. Let me share my screen here. All right, page 425. We've got Gossipy Company. They make a single product called Paizoji. That's a nice little pronunciation key there for you. They make Paizojis. And they've prepared the following cost detail for 1 unit of Paizoji. It says their direct materials is 5 pounds. So 5 pounds of direct material at $3 per pound. That's their standard. The direct labor is 2 hours at $14 per hour. Okay, so to make 1 Paizoji, that's how much direct material they need. That's how much direct labor they need. So those first 2 bullet points, you could label those, write standard next to them. Those are the standards. It goes on to say, during the month of June, Gossipy manufactured 400 Paizojis, and they incurred the following actual costs. So now we're about to get into the actual information, what actually happened in the real world once they began manufacturing Paizojis. It says the direct materials purchased and used was 2,200 pounds, and they paid a total of $5,000 for that. Their direct labor spent in making 400 Paizojis was 790 hours, and they paid a total of $12,000. Okay, now That's all the information we need to find out to do some calculations here. Now, what we want to do, where we're trying to wind up, look back at page 421. We're going to be calculating the materials price variance. We're going to calculate the material quantity variance, as well as the total material variance. And then we're also going to calculate these direct labor variances, all three, the labor price variance, the labor quantity variance, as well as the total labor variance. And so to help us do this, I want to use all of these variables that we need for our formulas. On the bottom of page 421, we need all these variables. So let's try to decipher what are the variables. So go back to page 425. I have listed out all the variables that are in our formula. And we need to use the information presented to us to just come up with all the variables. So you've got three columns. The first column lists out the variable. The second column, which is a small column, that's where we're going to write the final answer. That's what that variable is going to equal. And in the big rectangle next to it, I'm going to write how we got that information. Okay? So here we go. The actual quantity, all right, the actual quantity, the AQ, this is going to be 2,200 pounds, and this information was given to us. So in making 400 piezoges, the actual quantity of materials was 2,200 pounds of material, and this information was given to us. Okay, that was presented to us. Now, the standard quantity is reflecting how much material should we have used in making 400 piezoges. Okay, how much material should we have used? What is the standard amount of material to make 400 piezoges? So here, I'm going to put 400 piezoges at 5 times 5 pounds of material. So in the first bullet point at the top of page 425, it says that the direct material standard is 5 pounds. That's to make 1. So if we want to make 400 piezoges, we need to multiply that 5 pounds by 400. So the standard quantity is 2,000 pounds. I want to pause there and ask, what questions do you have? Okay, so I'm looking at, for the actual quantity and the standard quantity, that's referring to looking at what we actually produced. Okay, what did we actually purchase in terms of materials? What did we actually use in terms of materials in making all 400 of these piezoges? Okay, now let's go to the actual price. Now we want to talk about how much did we pay for the material. So I'm going to put in here, we spent $5,000 to buy 2,200 pounds of material. So I'm breaking the price down to the actual per unit of material. So $5,000 was the total cost in buying 2,200 pounds of material. That means we spent $2.27 per pound when buying the material. Questions on this, please. Talk to me. Take yourself off mute if needed. Now, the standard price the standard price is actually given to us. If we go back up to the first bullet point, page 425, it says direct materials, 5 pounds at $3 per pound of material. So it should have cost us $3 per pound. And that information was given to us. Questions on that, please? All right. Now let's go to the actual hours. The actual hours are they're given to us. We want to state the actual hours in terms of how many hours did we actually spend making 400 paizojis, and that's been given to us, 790 hours. That's found in the very last bullet point, that fourth bullet point there. It says the direct labor was 790 hours. So that information was given to us. And then we want to calculate the standard hours. So how long should it have taken us under normal operating conditions to make 400 paizojis? So to do this, we're going to do a little bit of math. We're going to take 400 paizojis and multiply times the standard hours, which is 2 hours. If you look in the second bullet point, it says direct labor, 2 hours is the standard, 2 hours to make 1 paizoji. So we're going to multiply that times 400 paizojis, and we're going to get 800 hours. All right. Questions on this, please? Okay. The next thing we want to do here is the actual rate. How much are we actually paying people? And we're going to do this per hour. How much are we paying people per hour? So the actual rate, we'll do a little bit of math here, okay? We were told that we spent, look at the last bullet point, we spent $12,000 in total paying our labor, and they work for 790 hours. So I'm going to divide $12,000 by 790 hours. That's going to tell us their rate of pay was $15.19. $15.19 per hour. That includes their time spent working. It includes any breaks they needed, any extra payroll taxes we had to pay. All of that comes into the actual rate that we paid. Okay. So then we want to look at what should we have been paying people, or what should it have cost us per hour? So that actually is given to us as $14 per hour. That's in the second bullet point at the top of page 425. It says direct labor, 2 hours at $14 per hour. So these are our variables that we need to do all of the math and all of the calculations given to us. Okay. And we're about to perform what we call variance analysis. We're going to be comparing what we actually did to what the standards are, and being able to say, did we have a favorable outcome or an unfavorable outcome? All right. So any questions on anything in this chart before I move forward? This is the most important thing, just being able to document what are the variables here that go into the actual formula. Because we have the formulas. Once we've got these variables, we just plug in the numbers into the formula and it just spits out the final answers. Well, maybe not that easily, but we'll see.
Sorry, Professor, I was wondering, so there's no actual formulas for this step? It's just we use what's in the given information, or are those in the book? So
the actual formulas for this step, we're just simply interpreting the data presented. And this isn't easy. This is a skill. You've got to learn to interpret data. And this is very real world. It's just going to be tossed out at you. Hey, here's all this information. So what I've done here on page 425 with you is simply dissect all of this information to figure out what goes into these variables that we need for our formula.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Okay, look at page 426. In fact, look at page 426, keep your finger there, turn to page 421. I need you to rewrite the memorization table at the top of page 426. I need you to rewrite this memorization table. I'll write it here for you so you can easily copy it down. We're about to use this memorization table to help us with the formulas for pages 426 and 427. Now, I know many of you read the book on this, and they've presented that what I'm about to share with you, they have presented the information differently in the textbook. And I just decided to take a different route on it because if you don't like my method, you can use the textbook's method. And the textbook's method, you'll find several YouTube videos demonstrating just how the textbook method does it. And I personally found it confusing when I was sitting where you're sitting. So I just had to come up with a different method when it came to teaching this stuff. But the textbook method is very visual. Mine is very, as we'll say, mine is very mathematically oriented. Okay, so you've rewritten this, or you've written down those formulas. Now, the first question is, what is the material price variance? So this is the formula that we're about to fill out, the MPV, materials price variance. We're going to just input our numbers from page 425 into this formula here. So I'm going to take the actual quantity, the actual price, and standard price, and it's going to look a little bit like this in the formula. Now, some of you are going to get ahead of me, so I'm going to say right now, your final answer here should not be a negative or a positive number. We're going to use absolute value numbers in our final answer. We're going to use absolute value numbers. And so this calculates to an MPV, a materials price variance of $1,606. I just want to pause here. I'm not done with this, number one. I'm not done with number one, but I just need to ask, does anyone have any questions how I got this $1,606? I need to make sure you can put this in your calculator and calculate it. Talk to me. All right, so I'm assuming you all can do that then. So the question is, whenever we calculate a variance, a materials price variance, a labor variance, whatever it is, we need to say, is the variance favorable or unfavorable? Just like we were doing when we were talking about flexible budgets, we needed to know if that last column when doing the flexible budgets, if that particular difference was favorable or unfavorable. That was the difference column. So in order to determine if this difference is favorable or unfavorable, I need you to focus on just the middle, or just the end of this formula, what's inside the parentheses, okay? That's very important that you focus on what is inside the parentheses. Now, in the parentheses, just to back up a moment, remember inside the parentheses is the actual price minus the standard price. So this $2.27 is the actual price. The $3 is the standard price. This information inside the parentheses is going to help us determine if the variance is favorable or unfavorable.
Favorable.
Well, here's how we do it. We ask ourselves, okay, we actually paid $2.27, and the standard, what we should have paid is $3. So is it a good thing when you pay less than the standard, or is it a bad thing?
I'm promoting my manager after that.
Say again?
I'm promoting my manager after that. He just made me some money.
Okay, well, wait till the end of this. I'm not done. You got to hear this. I've got this story to tell you. You're gonna demote your manager after this. Okay, all right. So the actual price is less than the standard price. Therefore, this $1,606 is favorable. That is a favorable difference. I'm going to pause right there. Talk to me. Okay, so you guys are okay with why that's favorable. All right. Now, that was just number one. Let's go to number two here on page 426. All right. So here on number two, the question is, what is the materials quantity variance? The materials quantity variance. So we're going to look at, well, the answer is 600. Anyway, I'll just put it up here. Yeah, I got to redo this slide, I think. So anyway, this is the materials quantity variance. You get 600. Take a look at it. Write it down. And I want you to ask me any questions on how I got $600 as the material quantity variance. I need to make sure you understand how I calculated the $600 quantity variance. Don't hesitate to ask. All right. So we then need to figure out, is this variance favorable or unfavorable? That's the important thing here. Is it favorable or unfavorable? And to do this, we're going to focus on just what's inside of the parentheses. So look at the parentheses, which is the actual quantity and the standard quantity. And we need to ask ourselves, this actual quantity of 2,200 pounds of material and the standard quantity is 2,000. So this is saying that we spent, we used more material than we should have used. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That
I'm favorable.
That is bad. That is bad. That is bad. We used more material than we were supposed to. Okay, so the actual material used, the actual quantity was higher than the standard amount. That means we did something bad there. Something went wrong. So our material quantity variance is going to be unfavorable. Questions on this, please? All right. Good. Okay. Now, let's take it one step further. Look at question number 3. What is the total materials variance? Now, earlier I said that this formula on page, look back at page 421, the third formula is the total material variance. I did not give you a revised formula. I simply said it is calculated. So I now want to talk to you about how we calculate the total material variance. So look at page 426. So I've got this material price variance of 1606 favorable, and this material quantity variance of $600 unfavorable. And now I want to calculate the total materials variance. Now here's how we do it. The total materials variance is simply going to be using these two other, or the two numbers 1 and 2, this material price variance and the material quantity variance. We're simply going to do some math using these two numbers. Now, in order to do the math, we have to look to see, are they favorable or unfavorable? If the two words are different, then subtract one number from the other. If the two words are the same, we would add the two numbers together. So here's what I mean by that. These two, one is favorable, the other is unfavorable. Because those words are different, I'm going to subtract $600 from the 1606. And I'm going to put as a resulting word whichever one of these numbers has the biggest dollar amount. So here's how this works. 1606 minus 600 equals 1006, and I'm going to use the word favorable because in the components of this, the biggest dollar amount was on the with favorable. So that's why this is favorable. If the material quantity variance had the biggest dollar amount, it would have been unfavorable. Okay? And again, I'm using the absolute value in this calculation that I'm subtracting these two numbers, one from the other. I'm using the absolute value and just putting in favorable or unfavorable. So let me pause right there and ask what questions you have on that.
If it's unfavorable, will we always subtract it, or is it always just MPV minus MQV?
Okay, let me say this again. If both of these words were the same, if both were favorable, you would add the two numbers. If both were unfavorable, you would still add the two numbers. Because they are different words, you're just going to subtract one from the other and write the resulting word for whichever number is biggest. So because they are different, I'm subtracting one from the other. How's that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. That's what I mean by calculating the TMV, the total material variance. All right, any other questions on that, please? Okay, now, one other thing we have to talk about here on this page before we move on is we've got a favorable variance, we've got an unfavorable variance. Remember when we were talking about flexible budgeting, we were looking at, what was our term? We had a particular terminology. I want to refer back to it appropriately here. So let me see. Go to page 401 in your workbook. Flip over to page 401. The very first word is management by exception. Management by exception. So here we want to investigate the large differences, okay, or the large variances in our case. Management by exception. That's the point I want to make here. Here we've got a favorable variance, we've got an unfavorable variance. Now, for the favorable variance, my question to you all is, who should get the credit for the materials price variance? Who do we say, oh, you've done a wonderful job? What manager gets the credit?
Production.
Say again?
Production.
Oh no. Oh no. Now this is the material price variance. Price variance is favorable. Does the production manager have anything to do with the price of anything?
Because I was thinking if he's using more materials than necessary, that's going to drive the cost for the unit.
No, I think you're getting this wrong. I'm not talking about how much material was used. I'm just talking about the price of the material.
Oh, so okay, purchasing. Because then they're going to go.
Say again?
Purchasing?
Purchasing.
Purchasing is correct. Absolutely. The purchasing department manager gets the credit for having this favorable material price variance. It's their job to go out, that manager's job, to find the material and get it at a good price. Okay, so that's the purchasing department manager who gets the praise as a result of this. But now we've got this material quantity variance, the MQV. It was unfavorable. Who do we blame for using the wrong amount of material?
Production manager.
Production.
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 So that's where the factors of like carelessness and inefficient employees, that's where that factors into the unfavorable then.
Absolutely. That's where it factors into. So the production manager will get the blame for having an unfavorable variance here. And you might have to call the production manager into the office and say, hey, what's going on? Remember Manny when we were talking about flexible budgeting? Same thing here. You got to bring that production manager in and figure out why do they have this unfavorable variance.
So if something gets like backlogged, then that could be on the production manager.
Well, I'm not going there just yet. We'll talk about that later. Let's just deal with what we have here. So let's say we call in this production manager, okay, and we say, what happened? What happened? Why did you guys have such an unfavorable variance? We have to investigate this. And the production manager will say, well, listen, my team and I, we were putting these paizojis together, and you know, the material just wasn't acting right. And we kept having to, you know, throw some away, and you know, it just started disintegrating on us, like we couldn't use the material. And so the production manager says, by the way, who bought this junk? Who bought this crappy material? And so the boss, you know, they call in the purchasing department manager and says, hey, you know, you got a really good price on this material. How'd you get such a good price? And the purchasing department manager says, well, you know what? I was talking to the company that we buy this stuff from, and they told us that they were having a sale on some material they hadn't sold in a while, and I thought we could go ahead and use it. So I got this really sweetheart of a deal on the price, and there it is. And as it turns out, the production manager says, see, it's not my fault. It's the purchasing department manager for buying this awful material that is not up to our specifications. So really, it's the purchasing department manager's fault. Does that make sense?
So then
then give him a raise because he made 1,006.
But
No, we don't want to give the purchasing department manager a raise. He bought cheap material. It didn't meet the specifications of what was needed. Was somebody else going to say something?
yeah, I have two things. Because that unfavorable can lead to larger money losses in the future, correct?
Well, I'm just saying, you know, if we in our scenario, the amount of material that was bought was actually used.
Okay. And then
Okay.
and then second thing, could you kind of tie it into, imagine, for example, you're the CEO of Wells Fargo. The person who's in charge of creating direction for compensation and quota tells you that the numbers are super high, we're making record profit, but the employees who were working it are actually opening up fake accounts and opening up accounts to not get fired. So
I knew where you were going.
Yeah, so that's fluffing up the numbers. So could you say that's a similar situation?
It is you could make an argument that that is a similar situation in a service industry. And really my point here in pointing this out to you, class, is that a company is a combination of different components working together, hopefully to move the company in the same direction with a similar desired outcome. So you can't have one aspect of the company saying, oh, we're doing really good, and another aspect of the company or another department in the company doing horrible, you know, and so you're rewarding all the people in one department but not the other, and you're coming down hard on the people in the department that's not doing good. The company as a whole is what needs to be considered. And you actually might find yourself rising to those levels of management, and you need to take into consideration that it's not about just one department achieving their goals. It's about the company and the entire mission of the company achieving its goals. And so we're going to talk about this a little bit later tonight and how this all comes together. But I've seen this happen so many times that I've used this example before in class. I want to use it again. After class today, if you're, you know, after you put away your computer and you just want to go and lay down, you walk to your bed and you stub your toe on the bedpost on the floor, and your toe begins to hurt. You're not going to say in your mind that, oh, my whole body feels good except for my toe. I wish my toe didn't hurt like that. Your whole body is going to hurt because you're all connected. You've got all these connected pieces. And that's the way a company operates, or should operate, as a connection of body parts all moving in the same direction towards the same desired outcome. Let that sink in. We'll come back to it later tonight. All right, look at page 427. Or before I move on, any other questions on the material variances on page 426? Any questions at all? Okay, look at page 427. On page 427, we have the labor variances. So the first one is the labor price variance. This is the formula. And if we drop in our variables into the formula, this is what we get. Give you a moment to write that down. When you do the math on this, you get $940.10. Now that's not the end result, because we need to say, is this number favorable or unfavorable? Very important. And again, in order to figure out if this is favorable or unfavorable, I want you to look inside, well, we would look inside the parentheses here, at the actual rate and the standard rate. If the actual rate is less than the standard rate, it's favorable. If the actual rate is higher than the standard rate, it is unfavorable. It means we spent too much money on our labor. So here the $940.10 is unfavorable. It's unfavorable. Talk to me. What questions do you have? Okay, let's look at number 5. What is the labor quantity variance? Our formula for the labor quantity variance is as follows: standard rate times the actual hours minus the standard hours. And if we just plug in our variables, here's what we get. I'm going to let you guys take it from here and tell me what this final answer is. So I'll look in the chat room to see what you guys come up with. Okay, now don't put any negative numbers in this. Everything is an absolute value. No negative numbers, just absolute value, okay? And then you want to say, is it favorable or unfavorable? Okay. All right, so here we go. So here the labor quantity variance is $140. And as I saw most of you said, it was favorable, okay? It was favorable because the actual hours were less than the standard hours. That's a favorable thing. Getting your employees to work a little more efficiently, a little more effectively is always a good thing. All right. So any questions there, please talk to me. All right, so let's answer question 6. What is the total labor variance? Here we have our two components. Similar to what we did for the materials variances, we're going to do the same thing for these labor variances. If the signs are different, subtract one from the other. If the signs are the same, you would add them together. Always use whichever dollar amount is largest in terms of writing, is it favorable or unfavorable? So your final answer should in fact be $800.10 unfavorable. What questions do you have on this, please? Any questions at all?
I have a question.
Talk to me.
So the cost detail, those are just made up numbers again, right?
The cost detail are made up numbers. Well, they've taken the time to calculate what it should cost to make one unit.
So it's just like the budget, right?
It is a budget, it's a form of a budget, but they've definitely thought it through. All right, so they might have created this budget by actually doing a trial run of doing the development during the development process.
Got it, just double checking, thank you.
Yeah, so I don't want to say the numbers are made up like I did with the other budgets that were mainly wishful thinking. this is it's at such a low level that they definitely have to put some thought into this, and then they can extrapolate into making the other larger budgets, you know, the master budget, in other words. Okay.
Understood. Thank you again.
Okay, so let me go through this again. Why is this unfavorable? I've got two in the, let me back up here. I've got the labor price variance is $9.40.10, unfavorable. The labor quantity variance is $140, favorable. Because these two signs are different, one is unfavorable, the other is favorable, I'm definitely going to subtract the numbers. Now, the tag that I put on the final number after subtracting these will go to whichever number has the largest, or whichever line item had the largest dollar amount. In this case, $940.10 is larger than $140, so the total variance will follow the sign of the $940.10, so unfavorable. So in the final output, it's $800.10 unfavorable, just because the labor price variance had the largest dollar amount, and we're using that tag, that unfavorable tag. Okay, so I'm hoping that answers that question. Okay, so that's the end of Gossipy Company. What I'd like for you to do is look at page 428. I would like for you to take the time, read page 428, fill out the chart on page 428 for Porsche Company. All right, take a moment and do that. And I'm going to pause the recording while you're doing that, and we'll come back to it in a little bit. Okay, so let's see how you did here on page 428. Porsche Company. Just want to see if you were able to lay out your variables. So we're going to walk through these here. So just take a look and let me know how you did. All right, take a look at these. Ask me questions. What questions do you have? No questions? Okay. Well, in that case, take a moment then. I'd like for you to do pages 429 and 430. All right, just going to be checking you guys. So look at pages 429 and 430 and answer those questions based on this information. Okay, did I give you all enough time to answer those questions? Let me know if you need any more time. Okay. All right, so let's review here, see what you came up with. Materials price variance, I got 1850 favorable. Materials quantity variance, I got $900 unfavorable. So here they are side by side to help you with number 3. And total variance should be 950 favorable. Okay, any questions on that, please? Talk to me. On 1, 2, or 3, any questions there? This is page 429. Okay. All right, no questions on that, huh? All right, all right. So on page 430, the labor variances, the labor price variance, number 4 on page 430, you should have gotten $120 favorable. The labor quantity variance should be $1,880 favorable. I'll just put those 2 on the screen, which will help you get number 6. And that total labor variance, because these signs are the same, we add them together, $2,000 favorable. Okay. I did want to, so as I pause right there, what questions do you have on these labor variances? Talk to me. No questions? It means you guys are really getting this? Formulas make them seem pretty straightforward. I believe so. Okay.
We're taking it this slow.
Okay. So what about, here's something I didn't talk about earlier. On the labor variances, who do you give credit to for this labor price variance? Who do you give credit to on that? If it's favorable, who do you give credit to? If it's not favorable, who do you blame on the price variance? What department, what manager gets the credit or the blame for the labor price variance? I see someone saying production. No, they have no control. The production department manager does not decide how much to pay people.
No one?
Scheduling manager, I don't know. I like that. HR, human resources. I see that. Human resources. Yes, that is a good person, a good manager to blame or give credit to. When it comes to the labor price variance, human resources has a lot to do with it. Okay. Now, when we get to the quantity variance, the labor quantity variance, that's when the production manager comes into play. All right, because they're the ones deciding on how much time people are actually spending contributing to the production process. And if it takes longer than usual, you're gonna have to pay people overtime. And that's not part of the standard. Paying people overtime is not necessarily part of the standard. Okay, so the production department manager really has to work things out here. Which I see someone's raised an issue. He doesn't control the wages, only the amount of hours. Yeah, the production department manager controls the hours. And but as we said earlier, that departments work together for the good of the company. So, you know, every bone in your body is connected in some way. So I want to raise the question of, and this is when I need you to chime in and talk to me, okay? If you don't feel like talking, you can do it in the chat room. Please chat openly for everyone to see. But my question is it better to have your workforce be in a union or not in a union? Do you want your workforce to be in your, let's say you own the company.
No.
Yes. Because I don't have to pay.
If you own the company, no.
You are the owner of the company. You are the CEO. Do you want your workforce in a union or not in a union?
Not in the union.
I would say 100%.
I don't want nobody to.
100% you want them in a union.
Yes. For me, specifically.
Okay, so some people want them in a union. Some people say no union.
No union.
Only because I've been in a union before, so that's why.
Well, we'll talk about what it means to be in a union in a moment. But from the owner's perspective, do you want your employees in a union or not? I'm seeing some chats going on here. After you've answered, put your mute on. All right. Do not send me private. You got to respond publicly to everyone. That only makes the polling work. Don't send me private messages on this. You must take a position.
What?
Don't send me private messages now. Respond to everyone. Okay. So I would say a lot of people are saying no union, and other people are saying yes union. Now remember, the perspective here is that you're the owner, you're the CEO, you are in control of everything. And I can argue this both ways. So, and I want to do it so that you understand it both ways. And then when you get into the real world, you figure it out. Okay, but the good thing about having, well, let me put it this way. There was a famous man who died. This famous man's name was Jerry. Jerry started a company, all right, and then he died later on, but he started this company. Company was very successful. And he was being interviewed one day, Jerry was, before he died. And he was being interviewed about one of his best employees. And they asked him, they said, Jerry, they said, you know, you've got this wonderful employee here. What do you think about this employee? And he says, I just love this employee. This is the hardest working person I've ever met in my life. He makes this company a lot of money. In fact, Jerry went on to say, I am severely underpaying this employee. And they said, well, why are you underpaying him? He said, because the employee is in a union and the union does not let me pay the employee more than I pay anyone else. That's what Jerry said. Jerry said this just before he died, maybe 3 years before he died. So Jerry started a company, and you all know the name of the company that Jerry started. Well, Jerry didn't actually start the company. He bought the company from somebody else. Okay, but the name of the company was, does anyone know? What company did Jerry take over and buy? Jerry bought the Los Angeles Lakers, and the employee he was talking about was Kobe Bryant. He said, I don't have to pay my star player more than I pay anyone else because the union will not let me. So basically, Kobe Bryant was making Jerry, you know, billions of dollars every year. And Jerry was not paying him what he was worth because the union said you cannot pay him more than a certain dollar amount. And that's really what unions do. Unions allow you to plan for how much you're going to pay your labor. So when you're creating a budget for your company or different departments or the company as a whole, you can really plan on what you're going to be paying your labor. And it's very predictable when your employees are all in a union. Number one, because you don't have to pay people more than what the union allows you to pay. And so really the union format favors the employer in that everything becomes very predictable, okay? Now, if you're the employee, look at this from the employee's perspective. Do you want to be in a union or do you not want to be in a union? All right, I want you all to chime in on this.
100% I want to be in a union if I'm an employee.
Okay, anyone else? So I say, yes, I want to be in a union.
Yes, I want to be in a union. Depending, if you're Kobe Bryant, you don't want to be in the union, right?
I want to know about you personally.
But at that point, you're so rich, it doesn't matter.
I want to know about you personally. Do you want to be in the union? Okay, so I have everybody saying yes, yes, yes. I see people saying no, no, no.
Yes, I think yes.
All right. So let me explain to you what you want to do here.
I love Christian's honesty.
All right. So mute yourselves and I'll tell you about this. Okay. Now, if you do not want to do, if you are the best at what you do not want to be in a union. If you're not so good at what you do want to be in the union, okay? But I'm just telling you, bottom line, and I'm in a union right now, being a teacher, except in certain circumstances, but being a teacher at OCC, I'm in a union. And I am the best financial accounting instructor in Southern California. Not managerial accounting, but financial accounting. And I am severely underpaid for being a financial accounting instructor at OCC, being that I'm the best, okay? Now, other schools have tried to hire me just to teach financial accounting because I'm so good at it. And I only have so many hours in a day, so I can't just work everywhere. But other schools pay me a whole lot more than OCC pays me when I do teach financial accounting for them. Now, I'm not so good at managerial accounting, as you can see. But that being said, I like being in the union for that. But when you're good at something, the union is going to cap your pay so you don't get paid much more than everyone else. That's kind of the beauty of the union if you're not very good or if you don't want to work too hard, okay? So it just depends on your perspective. But there are some good things about being in a union, and there are some bad things about being in a union. And if you're the owner of the company, there's definitely some good things about having your employees in a union. My only real example there is from a planning perspective. But then there are some downsides if you're the owner too. You may lose a lot of control over things if all of your employees are in a union. And the only way to stop them from being in a union, your employees anyway, from being in a union, you'd have to start the whole company over again, meaning just fire everyone right away and start over from scratch. And then doing that, of course, you're going to get some bad will amongst your employees, which will devastate communities and, you know, get some bad publicity as a result of it.
Question.
So, yes.
Could you go over the labor price variance again?
Yeah. The one that's on the screen?
Correct.
All right. What aspect of it do you need to go over?
How, because I got a little bit of a different answer. I just wanted to get the calculations because it is AH times AR minus SR, correct?
Okay, which variance?
The labor price.
All right, so labor price. Now, if you do the number, if you fill in the variables correctly, you should have the right information. You should be able to get the same math. So let's just start with the variables, okay? Check your variables here. Make sure that you've got these last 4 variables correct.
Yes, I got that exactly correct.
Did you?
I see what I did wrong.
Okay, there you go. What'd you do wrong, just because we're curious?
I put 1870 instead of 75, and it threw all of my math off.
There you go. All right, you're all set. Okay, you're all set. Any other questions, class, please? Any other questions here? All right. Okay, so that being said, let's switch gears here. I want to switch gears. Look at workbook page 434. Let's go to page 434. I want to talk to you about something called the balanced scorecard. The balanced scorecard. And as you can see here, I've got these numbers 1 through 4. I believe you read a little bit about the balanced scorecard in your textbook preparing for today's lesson. But the balanced scorecard essentially says, in order for a company to be successful, it needs to look at more than just the financial performance of the company, okay? As I've often spoke about earlier today, you need all parts and pieces of the company working together in order to achieve the desired outcome for the company as a whole. So this balanced scorecard is a way of thinking that companies do that really highlight this. So let's go over these. Now, certainly for a company to be successful, they need to look at their financial performance. Without a doubt, the financial performance of the company is a major component of the success of a company. It's not the only component, but it is a major component. So write this down. My definition for our financial performance is that this examines financial measures of performance, okay? Measures financial measures. Now, some of the measures that we need to look at here, and I won't have an exhaustive list, but I'm just going to highlight a few. You want to look at the return on assets for a company. And this kind of tells you if you are, how effectively are you utilizing the assets of your company. I'm going to give you another extra credit assignment that'll be due next week that'll have you looking at the return on assets of a particular company. You also want to look at the net income of the company. You certainly want that to be growing over time. You might, companies might pay attention to their credit rating because this will affect them when they go to issue bonds and needing to borrow other monies from financial institutions. They might also pay attention to their share price. This all relates back to their financial performance. Some companies might even take a measurement of how much profit do they make per employee. Obviously, companies want to do more with less when things get tight for them. So if they need to cut back on their number of employees, they're really looking at how much profit per employee are they making in the company. So any questions here on the financial performance of a company in terms of one aspect or one perspective of something that'll make the company successful? Any questions here? So I have a question, what does it mean about return on assets? So I'm going to give you an extra credit assignment that allows you to calculate return on assets this coming week. And basically it's taking the financial statements and doing what we call ratio analysis. So specifically return on assets is the method of determining how effectively are you using the assets of your company? And so the formula essentially will say, okay, look at the assets that your company has. How much net income is your company generating as a result of the amount of assets you have? So you're going to see that this coming week if you decide to do the extra credit assignment. If you don't decide to do the extra credit assignment, it won't go more into it. But you can also look in your textbook for that.
Could you almost look at it like a predetermined overhead rate of the assets that a company owns?
No, it's just saying, okay, the company's bought some assets. What are they doing with them?
Okay.
If all you do is buy vacant land and it's just laying there, that's not really helping to generate any net income for the company.
Even if it's appreciating in value, for example, say the land's becoming developed, but it's not really doing anything, but it's becoming worth more money, thus technically boosting how much you could potentially sell it for?
You don't know what vacant land is worth until you sell it.
True.
And it does not help your net income with you just owning vacant land. Now, if you're going to do something with the land to help you generate net income, that's one thing. But if it's just you bought land waiting for it to go up in value, it's not helping you right now. You have to sell it first. Then you won't own it anymore. But what about a machine? Let's say you bought some machinery and you paid $1 million for the machine. Well, that machine can help you generate net income by, I'm assuming you're using that machine to help you produce something.
So is that kind of like when we industrialized cars, instead of humans making it, we turned it into machines? Could you argue that that machine that makes the cars is an asset that's giving you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, the machine is an asset that's helping you generate income. Now, the question becomes, are your employees assets? And the answer is no, they are not. Do the employees help you generate net income? Absolutely, but they are not your assets.
They sure like to tell you you're an asset when you work for a company.
Yeah, they only tell you that when they're not about to give you a raise. So, because they can't afford to give you a raise. They start off by telling you what a wonderful employee you are and how much they appreciate having you around, but times are tough right now, so we cannot give you a raise.
And pizza parties.
Yeah, pizza parties. There you go. All right. All right. So now let's see here. I have a question. Why do we call this a balanced scorecard? The name balanced scorecard is just simply a method of representing that it takes more than just the financial performance of a company to be successful. So things need to be balanced. So these 4 things that I've outlined here on page 434 represent the areas or things that a company has to focus on in order to be successful. They have to do all 4 of these things in a balanced way. They cannot focus on one and leave the other 3 behind. So the financial performance is very important. I am not going to make you think anything otherwise, but you have to look beyond the financial performance of the company to determine whether or not that company is successful. So let's look at the second one here, the customer service perspective. The customer service perspective. This evaluates how well the company is doing from those that buy the products and services of the company. So write that down. The company needs to pay attention to this. How well is the company doing from that perspective of the people that actually buy your products and services? Just about everywhere I go now, whenever I buy something, whoever gives me the receipt usually wants me to fill out some survey. And so they'll point at the receipt and tell me, hey, take our survey. What are they trying to do here? They're trying to get my feedback on my experience with their company because of this customer service perspective.
My place does it.
Your place does it?
At the credit union, yeah. We get rated off of how good surveys are.
Yeah.
And if we don't get good ratings, it negatively impacts our branch performance, and then we get a nice visit from their regional manager.
What if you don't get any feedback at all? I never take those surveys.
I have no idea. We haven't gotten to that point yet.
Oh my goodness. How many of you, let me know, how many of you all just don't take the surveys? They give away free food, never have. Yeah, I mean, but companies, they do give you stuff. I know at my local Carl's Jr., if I take the survey, then they will give me a product code and I can come back and get a free hamburger. Yeah, some people skip the surveys if they're too long. I see you. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, but companies, they spend an awful lot of money just to get your feedback. So let me list out a few things here that they're actually going to look at. They're going to look at customer retention. They're going to be asking you, how likely are you to come back? And they're going to pay attention to customers that keep coming back. They're actually keeping track of you. Those loyalty cards at the grocery stores, oh my goodness, they're just keeping track of who's coming back. Customer referrals. I know in a lot of surveys, they like to ask me, how often, or would you tell a friend about our company? You know, I'm like, okay, yeah, I had a good experience. I'm probably going to tell someone else. But they're looking at that. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and people say, hey, when you go to buy the product that I'm demonstrating to you, tell them that I sent you. All right, they're looking at those customer referrals.
Professor?
Yes.
Have you been to Disneyland to where you can do a survey for one of the employees?
I have not, but if we ask my daughter and my wife, maybe they have.
Yeah,
I haven't been to Disneyland in a while.
I used to work there, and you could go out of your way and ask to recognize an employee, and you would be pretty much go all the way to, I think it's the admissions, I don't know if they changed it, and get the employee's name, tell them how well the employee did, then he gets this, or she gets this card, and it's this humongous, like, extravagant thing that you got recognized by somebody.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
it's
What if
almost
you
like
got bad? What if you got bad information to say?
You might get called into the manager's office. We might not see you again, but
Yeah. I know Home Depot, whenever one of their people on the floor that are trying to be helpful to people, whenever they help you, they give you their name and their badge ID number, and they ask you to take a survey and tell them, you know, say on the survey they did a good job helping you, because if they get enough of those in a certain time period, they get some sort of reward for having done so.
could you say that that is a aspect of tying it back into what we're learning into standards? Because versus the ideal and the normal standard, you set the standards at a level that your employees can achieve to encourage them with rewards to achieve the standards, as opposed to going to the ideal one where you know they're going to feel extreme pressure to even achieve that.
I mean, you could relate it that way, but I think what we were talking about in terms of standards were for actual physical products, you know? Yeah, not the customer service aspect of things. But again, all of this begins to come together because the customer's perception of your products and services is sometimes based on how the employees are treating you, obviously, you know? So let's see. Companies also look at the response times on customer requests and customer feedback notes. I don't know if you've ever been on hold. I'm sure you have. If you've ever been on hold with a company just waiting to get some customer service, they're actually keeping track of how long are our customers being on hold. They want to improve that because they're trying to get customers to really like their company. Domino's Pizza used to have a slogan that, or they used to have something basically that says, hey, we'll deliver your pizza in 30 minutes or it's free. And, you know, they don't have that anymore. But when they did, it was because they wanted customers to know that they're going to be delivering excellent customer service in terms of timely delivery of pizzas.
I took full advantage of that.
Oh, you did?
Because
people died because of that.
Really?
Yes, that's why they don't do it anymore.
In my neighborhood, the address is repeat, but the streets are different. So
okay.
Pizza guy would always get confused, and I would just wait until 32 minutes. Then I'd call him back. So is that pizza free?
Wow. Look at how many people you're getting fired. Okay. All right. So let's look now at the internal process, number 3. Look at internal process. This is the company evaluating the internal operating processes critical to their success. Okay, so by this, I'm referring to some very specific elements here. Companies, from an internal perspective, they're looking at their percentage of defect-free products. All right, so they're going to keep track of returns and to find out why was a customer returning some of their products, were there defects in them. So they're actually keeping track of those things. Earlier this semester, we were talking about companies not necessarily wanting to quality control inspect their products. They want everything done right the first time. And that's because it costs money to do this quality control type stuff, but they are doing it. They are spending money, they're spending resources doing quality control. They're looking at waste reduction. Earlier I used the example of creating a shirt or making, how much material is needed to make your shirt that you're probably wearing right now. And, they look and keep track of how much material are our seamstresses actually using to make the final shirt. Meaning, what's left on the floor? What's left on the cutting floor of the material? They want as little material as possible left over. So, there's many areas that this could apply to, reducing waste. Stockouts. I guess with the exception of maybe Apple, most companies don't want to tell a customer, hey, we ran out. We'll have it for you next week, or it's going to take 2 weeks to send in more. They want to estimate the demand of their products and services to be very timely. They don't want to tell the customer to come back. Grocery stores sometimes would issue what are called rain checks, meaning they didn't have the product on the shelf for the customer to buy, so they give out these little tickets, these little cards that say, come back and get it in a couple weeks, we'll have it, and you'll get the price that we were offering it to you for today. So most companies don't want to have stockouts.
Some do the similar product thing too. If we don't have your product, we'll send you something of equal value.
Yeah, they'll do that as well. And companies are also looking at labor utilization rates. They're paying attention to, and this is scary for a lot of employees, and they're looking to see, are their employees really working a full day? Or do they have time to play on Facebook and update their social media pages and things like that? So that can be pretty scary, but they're trying to really look at labor utilization rates.
They track us at where I work like that. We have to sign in each person that we help, and then we have to check off every single interaction we helped them out with, and it tracks how long we took, and it tracks what our button strokes were, and then it tracks what windows we click on in terms of resources and how long it takes us to do that. Yeah.
What company is that?
Navy Federal Credit Union.
Okay, yep. And I know at OCC, if I want help from one of our IT people to help me with my computer or something like that, I can't just pick up the phone and call them. I actually have to create an official ticket or an official request so that they can be tracked in terms of what they're doing in terms of their jobs. And it helps them out from their perspective because it shows that they're actually busy.
Do you get surveys too?
Yeah, we get to do surveys and everything.
Yeah, they make us do surveys on the IT tickets too.
Yeah, absolutely. And but our OCC IT folks, I really appreciate them, especially working from home right now. I've actually our IT people have helped us on Sundays, or they've helped me on Sundays anyway. And it's not like I was being treated any special because I'm such a wonderful person on campus. I filled out an official ticket on Sunday morning, and by Sunday late morning, I had an IT person on the phone helping me, getting things up and running, and I just really appreciate them. But I had to create the official ticket. And I even had that person's cell phone number. And I remember actually calling them a few days later and leaving them a message on their cell phone. Hey, can you help me out with this and this stuff? And they did not call me back. And it was only when I created the official ticket that they returned my call and was able to help me. So I can appreciate that. Planning accuracy. So companies are looking at their budgets and they're evaluating how close was their actual results to their budget. So the budget is a planning phase for the company. So they're comparing to see, well, how well did we meet our budgeted plans? And then they'll make adjustments going forward from there. Okay, so this is all part of the internal process perspective. Then we get to innovation and learning. And here, this evaluates how well the company develops and retains its employees. Okay, so the focus here is about the employee becoming better than they already are. And to me, that's exciting because the company here is actually spending resources or spending money on the employee becoming better, okay? And so the company is going to keep track of the number of training hours that the employee puts in. Very important. I used to have a job in public accounting, and we had to say how many hours of training we were going to do every year. And I would tell my boss, you know, this year I'm going to do 40 hours of training. And so I would sign up for these either self-paced learning training sessions or, you know, schedule time off to go to some training session in a different state or whatever. But it was very important to the company that I was being trained in different areas of things I was doing. They keep track of reportable accidents. Have you ever been to Home Depot or Lowe's or some hardware store? If you look at on the walls, they might have a big poster about how many days since the last accident actually occurred within the company. And they're very proud of it. And I walked into this Home Depot once and it said 1 day, meaning they had an accident the previous day. So, and it starts over, but they're really paying attention to these things. Companies keep track of ethics violations. You know, so depending on your industry, you really have to, you know, sometimes, I guess somebody was talking about the banking industry earlier. Yeah, that would be an ethics violation for what Wells Fargo was doing. A lot of the employees and management, senior management, and probably the head of the company as well. So yeah, they keep track of the ethics violations. They also like to keep track of the number of cross-trained employees, meaning employees that can do more than one job at a time. Very important to the success of the company. Very important.
Disney makes a big deal about cross-training.
Oh yeah, if you can play Cinderella in the parade, you should also be able to play the Wicked Witch of the North in the parade.
if you get the height requirements.
Oh yeah, there you go. Employee retention is also important. They look to see how many employees leave after 1 year. That's horrible. It is very difficult to find new employees, believe it or not. So once you get an employee and you spend all this money training them, you don't want them to leave. And this is one of the big complaints in the world of public accounting and even private accounting now. People leave after a couple years. I've had employers tell me, they say, you know, we want to hire the students, but, you know, that are graduating from college, but their attitude is just a little different than, you know, when they were coming out of school. The attitude, they said, was that students expect to be promoted to the boss, become the head of the company within a year's time. If it doesn't happen, they quit. And I said, well, you know, you have to work that out, but and manage their expectations. But it's very true. It's a lot different now. Employees don't stick around for 20 and 30 years anymore. you've really got to do something to keep them. So employers do spend quite a bit trying to retain their employees.
Do you think that could be due to the rising in cost? For example, like in Orange County, you're most likely not buying a house working at Starbucks. So what is your incentive to stay somewhere where you know that at most you got to stay somewhere 20 years when you can go somewhere else and work 5 years and achieve the same level of moving up?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many factors that go into it, but that certainly could be one. You know, I've told people, why don't you work for the company in a different state? You know, I had one young lady, a student of mine, I encouraged her to go work in the banking industry while at OCC. And she did so well working at Wells Fargo. Okay, just happened to be Wells Fargo. She did so well working there, they had promoted her to kind of be the supervisor of the branch. And her problem was she wanted to go to UC Berkeley. And so she said, what am I going to do? You know, I'm not going to be able to keep my job working at Wells Fargo. And, you know, I still want to go to Berkeley. And so I said, why don't you go to Berkeley and see if the company won't just transfer you to another branch at Berkeley? Said, you may not be the supervisor right away, but you'll still have a job while you're there. And I said, you're good at what you do. I'm sure you can rise to the top there just as you did here in Costa Mesa. And so eventually she did transfer to Berkeley, and I never heard from her again. So that's where I stopped my story.
That means she did well.
Yeah. So yeah. Toyota moved from Torrance, California to Dallas, Texas. In the past 5 years, they moved. And they said, hey, if you want to work with us, we'd love to have you come to Dallas with us and keep on working for us. And a lot of employees moved with them, but not every employee did. Okay. All right. So it is my contention, class, that you need to bring all 4 of these elements together in order for your company to be successful. You do need to bring all 4 of these elements together. And I want to point out in particular the customer service perspective, how important that is. The best example I have on the customer service perspective is going to be looking at the hotel, a hotel I've never stayed in overnight, the Ritz-Carlton. Some of you may have actually stayed at a Ritz-Carlton before, but I've never personally stayed at a Ritz-Carlton. And but I have studied them. Now, I've spent the day at a Ritz-Carlton doing different things at the Ritz-Carlton, having fun. Someone else was paying for it. But it's a very pricey hotel. I couldn't even imagine how much it costs per night to stay there. So let's just say it costs $700 a night. Okay, I'm just throwing that number out there. I'm not sure how accurate that is. But they have a policy at the Ritz-Carlton that basically says, if our customer has a complaint about anything, whoever they tell that complaint to has a certain dollar amount. They can spend up to $300 to make that customer happy. Let me give you the example here, okay? At the Ritz-Carlton, let's say you're checking in and you're going to, you have a bellman helping you take your bags up to your room. Okay, so this is very standard procedure at most hotels. And so you get to your room with the bellman, they help bring your luggage in, they point out some different features of the room for you to see, and you notice that there is a crack in your window. You have a sliding glass door that leads to the balcony, and it's cracked. Not a big crack, but it's a crack, and it's at eye level. And you mention that to the bellman. The bellman is allowed to spend $300 without asking for anyone's permission to help solve that problem. And then once that problem is solved, that bellman is responsible for coming to you, specifically the customer, and saying, is everything okay now? It's that bellman's responsibility. That bellman, as I said, they can spend $300 without asking for anyone's approval to help satisfy you, the customer. And I see someone here says the base price is $500 a night. The executive suite is $24.50. Okay, so let's go with the base price, $500 a night. We're not, I'm not staying at the suite just yet. I'll take it if you got it though. All right. But yeah, so what the Ritz-Carlton realizes is it is easier to keep a customer, a current customer, than to find a new one. It is cheaper to keep a current customer than to find a new customer, which is why they let their employees spend up to $300 without asking questions to satisfy that customer. And I just think that's very telling. That's very telling. So that's in the business area, just trying to keep your current customers. Now, I'll make it personal for you. Stepping aside from the business area, think about your friends. All right, think about your friends. You ever get into an argument with your friend?
All the time.
All the time. And that's okay.
My friend's like a debater. So like you could say the sky is blue and he will find a way to debate you on how the sky is not actually blue, but it's a reflection of the ocean. Thus I'm wrong. The sky is not blue. One of those friends.
Okay. Well, I was going to go a different route here. Let's say that you and your friend have a dispute over money. And your friend is visiting you at your home and they break your favorite vase, or I guess when it's cost a lot of money, it's a vase, or they pull up their car in your driveway and their car leaks oil in your driveway, ruining your cement. Okay, so it's a question of money now, and your friend decide they're not going to give you any money for breaking your stuff or ruining your driveway. Or let's say they owe you money and haven't paid you back. My question to you is it cheaper to get a new friend, or is it cheaper to keep the one friend you already have and you forget about the fact they owe you money now?
I will never forget if somebody owes me money.
No, but you keep them as your friend. And you don't worry about the fact that they're not paying you back.
I mean, you'll still be my friend, but like I'm not doing you any more favors until you pay the money, and then the favors activate again.
But see, you're keeping that friend. You're keeping that friend.
Because I value humans more than money.
Well, I don't. I value friendship more than money, but I don't value all humans more than money. I can't say that. I'm not that person.
I see your point there.
Yeah, but it's cheap. I will pay to keep a current friend than to have to go out and find a new friend, because to me it's just difficult to find friends. It is just difficult, and something to think about. But companies think about it. They think about their customers in the same manner, and they can get pretty deep after a while at what a company will do to keep a customer happy. The old saying of the customer is always right is a myth. Customers are not always right. Customers are not always right. But sometimes you let them think they're right just to keep them as a customer.
I have an example of that. I don't know if it's an exact example, so correct me if it doesn't correlate. When I was working at Disneyland, we were able to do a magical moment for somebody, for example, say it was a birthday or some way to wow them. So I gave this little kid this giant Mickey head made out of bread that cost about $20 per piece. The lady who was friends with the mom of the child wanted one for her child. I said, unfortunately, it's the kid's birthday, so that's why I'm giving him this expensive loaf of bread. She proceeded to get mad. Mind you, I'm African American, and she's African American, said that I'm being racist to African Americans. And went to my manager, and he got so scared, he just gave her a free loaf of bread, and then that was that, and got mad at me and apologized for my behavior for not giving that kid a bread, even though it was originally for the kid's birthday, and the other kid was completely unrelated, to retain that other customer.
Yeah, they're trying to keep their customers more than their, what do they call you, cast members?
Yeah.
Now, behind the scenes, did your manager say, hey, I had to just take care of the customer?
No, he didn't apologize. He just did it and went back to his office, and we never saw him all day.
Well, there you go.
Because
Okay.
it's like an area, so there's like hundreds of us in one area and one manager, so he can't, you know.
Yeah, he can't babysit you all.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, point taken there. Point taken there. All right. I see someone saying I should demote my friends to an acquaintance. Yeah. I don't know. My friends, you know, I don't know. The people, I don't call everyone a friend. I have a lot of acquaintances. I only have a few friends. All my friends, I can go spend the night at their house right now if I needed to. So my friends, it costs a lot to be my friend because I make demands on you and you can make demands on me. So, yeah.